Welcome and hello to everyone, both live and via YouTube when you view this later. This is our Morning on Main's topic, tips and tools you need to effectively share your impact with your elected officials. We traditionally do this in January because we are going to do our Capitol Day in Jefferson City. It's been moved a little bit this year into February, just to give a little extra time. But encourage folks, as you're going to hear from the two presenters, there's never a bad time to talk to your legislators, your elected officials. And so, Gayla, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce our panelists.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I know that we still have people coming in. So again, we wish you guys a great 2026, and we're already off to a rough legislative start. And so here we go. But Kelly, many of you guys have heard from Kelly before. I don't want to say we worship Kelly, but we adore Kelly and how she helps guide us in advocacy and all the work that we're doing here in Missouri. But she's done tremendous work for us at Main Street America, and we really thank Kelly for being involved with us, and that is her full-time position now, mainly, I believe, and it's well needed. So thank you, Kelly, for keeping us abreast of what's going on. And then Ben, many of you all have had Ben in your communities. If you haven't, well, hopefully you will soon, because Ben helps us and guides us. And Ben's going to talk about how we reach our legislators, our voice, and how we do that. And we always welcome Ben into Missouri communities and into our life here in Missouri, because he has helped guide us in so many ways. So thank you both for joining us and helping guide our network here. This is really big work for us in 2026, but we're up to the challenge. So here we go.
Hey, everybody. I think I'm supposed to start talking now, right?
You are. You're on.
All right, excellent. Hi, everybody out there. I'm Kelly with Main Street America. I dropped my email in the chat if you ever want to get in contact. Love to be able to see everybody. I've done this now multiple years in a row, so I'm really excited that Ben is joining this year to take some of the things that I'm going to say kind of in theory and put it into practice for you a little bit with practical kind of tools. I think that's a really great interplay. So I'm going to start off with just some overall kind of tips and tricks and get into a little bit of process stuff, and then we'll hear from Ben. So again, three main things that I think I'm going to cover real quick. A few basic steps on how to be a successful advocate. I am sure that there are people in this room who have been doing this for a long time and successfully. They have good relationships, and I'm sure that there are folks here that are newer to your Main Street work. You're like, hey, I'm supposed to advocate now? What is that about? We're going to just kind of go through some of the overall basics just to make you feel a little bit more comfortable with that as part of your role as a Main Street leader, which it is. And we're going to understand a little bit about state and local processes. You don't want to walk into a snake pit without understanding where you might find the door out. I don't know, that's just a new metaphor I made up, but you want to think through how you can navigate process to make it work for you as an advocate. That's always a best thing to do. And then the most important thing, especially as we go into kind of a tense legislative session and what might be hard decisions at the state and local levels about where funding priorities are, the most important part that you can play is to build relationships with elected officials. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to just take baby steps there. Get started on that process if you have not already. So kicking off, just some basic steps. In advocacy is many things. It is relationship building, it is education, it is sharing your impact, it is writing op-eds, it is lobbying directly and making asks. Whenever you're approaching that, though, you want to think about how you are setting yourself up in your message to talk to the person that you're targeting with your message about why what you are doing is important now. Why is this relevant in the moment? Relevance is about making it easy for them to understand and making it impactful to them, making it like something that makes sense for where their brain's at, right? If I'm a city manager and I'm thinking about how do I successfully spend all of this money and make an impact for the community, I'm thinking about ROI and I'm thinking about That's return on investment. And I'm thinking about being conscientious with budget, because that's people's tax dollars. That's important to everybody in the community. So we have to meet people where they're at with that message. How is Main Street supporting relevant problems in your community? We'll talk a little bit more about this, but think about what your community is messaging, right? If your community is messaging, our most important priority right now is affordable housing. How do you make Main Street play a role in that when you message to them, right? No matter what that priority is, you want to figure out how you frame your message to be aligned with that. You also want to collect and deploy your data. We make you, if you're a Main Street community, collect data all the time. Are you using it to its full potential? Are you collecting extra data about specific projects? Data is an advocacy opportunity. And I hope that you'll think about data in a couple of different ways as both problems and solutions for those problems. So you can talk about problems. If you're using a tool to inventory your buildings, like the booms tracker that MSA has, or another tool to make sure that you understand your downtown properties, you can talk about the vacant space in those properties. That's leaving tax dollars on the table. That's unused. Nobody's turning the lights on. There's nothing going to the utility there. There's nothing coming to the property tax pool. Well, there is, but not as much as there would be, right? You are talking about vacancy as a problem. You can also talk about data. You can also use your data to talk about solutions. You can say, this year, if this is the circumstance in your community, we have done X amount of grants for X amount of dollars, increasing sales by X amount or X percent. Think about what numbers you can collect specific to individual programs that you might be doing in downtown, especially before and after a streetscape improvement. Those are amazing numbers. These numbers are also both outputs and outcomes, and it's important in advocacy for you to be able to talk about both. An output is what you actually did, right? The work that you did. The outcome is the impact that had, and those are two different things. Many times we like to talk about, we produced 15 events downtown this year, and that's fantastic. But unless I know that from placer data or sales reports that event actually increased visitation and sales in the community by what percent or what dollar number, I'm just kind of talking about an activity. I'm not talking about the impact of that activity. So think about it. If you have a facade grant program and you did 9 buildings, that's great. You got grants out the door. But what did those grants do? Did they increase sales? That's the outcome number. Oops. And data is super nice, but you always want to collect it and pair it with stories. Stories are where the brain actually kicks into gear and makes the emotional connection for somebody who's going to make a decision. There's data on that. There's numbers that talk about how numbers aren't as important as stories. So think about how you use stories. Collect them from business owners, property owners, community members. Stories can be as simple as a quote. Storytelling is something that we talk a lot about, and we can spend way more time on it. But it's a basic framework. You already know it. You learned it in grade school. You want to have a hero. You want to have somebody in the community that had an impact. You want to talk about the problem that they faced. Joe had declining revenue because his facade wasn't, keeping up with the times. You gave them a facade grant. The hero, Joe, overcame the challenge of his losing sales at his hardware store to the Home Depot. He increased his sale by X percent. You helped in that. The Main Street program helped in that. And now we can carry this work forward and increase that impact in the community by increasing the city's contribution to that facade grant program. That's a story, right? And it can be pretty simple if you can collect those on a regular basis. The last thing you want to do is tell a decision maker what you want them to do, right? In that last example, when I was talking about Joe, I said, okay, now we're going to increase that facade grant program. We tell our success stories and our impacts, but we don't say what we need sometimes. And so we want to say either sustain this funding, increase this funding, don't cut this funding, make an ask of your local leaders. That's important to advocacy, actually having an ask. So how do you have an ask? If you're not sure where you're headed, use your transformation strategy, the priorities that you've already set within your program, the actual costs of doing work differently or moving a project forward to make a strategic ask with your local elected officials. You can compare If it's a budget ask, you can compare your budget to national stats. Every year, Main Street America has a survey that tells you what the average directors' salaries are, as well as budget contributions from local government. Those numbers are always on our blog. You can say our local program receives less than the average Main Street program nationally, right? You can use existing stats to improve your ask. You can also include other impacts like inflation or other economic impacts, because if you think that you've had the same contribution from your city for the past decade, a basic inflation calculator will tell you that that money is not worth the same that it once was, right? You can't nearly do the same work with it. And that's a basic ask. We're just keeping up with the times, right? But also local impacts, and we'll talk more about that. You want to set the bar at an attainable level with an ask that you make of your local government. If you tell your local government that you are going to, do 25 events next year, if they just increase your budget by a simple $5,000, that doesn't sound like it's going to math out for you, right? So we want to under promise and over deliver versus creating expectation for ourselves that we can't live up to with our city leaders. So think about being strategic with that, and think about trying to set yourself up for future successes to build that reputation of success if you don't already feel you have it. Finally, on this, we want to be aware of the local budget situation in advance of making a budget request for the local government. If the budget is constrained in your city, they're not going to have as much income as the year before. They're worried about the end of some COVID programs like ARPA that are coming to a close in 2026. And how are they going to fund existing programs? You probably don't want to walk into the room and ask for $200,000 extra dollars, not knowing that everybody is concerned about the budget. This is the year that you might want to be constrained if that's the circumstance. So think about how you gather that information on what the budget priorities are in your city. And that's open information for you and stuff that you should consider looking at. So just a recap of those basics quickly. It's how you frame the message, how are you relevant in this moment, how to use the data and the story to make an ask that's relevant in your community. Okay. This is where we're going to get a little deeper into what's happening in those processes that make you a savvy advocate. How are you aware of what your local budget or your local government might be prioritizing in their budget? It's fairly easy sometimes if you know where to look. So the bottom line here is that all local governments want to have a balanced budget. It is mandatory. They want to see impact and ROI. So when you share those statistics about how much you moved the needle forward on jobs, on private investment, that helps them justify what you're asking for, because they can say, with just that little bit of government investment, we're creating this big private investment. But every budget has limitations. You can understand where your budget is at through budget statements and planning documents such as master plans. I was looking around at different budgets. I found, I don't know if Donnie's on today, but in Lee's Summit, they actually have a presentation, a short video, how our local budget works on the Lee's Summit budget website. All the timeline for the budget is listed out there, all the documents. It's a really great public process. Then I looked over in Joplin. Joplin had a multi-page letter to the city this year about budget priorities, and they include things that Main Street fits into, right? The maintenance section with beautification, Joplin Main Street is listed right there, as well as in the economic development section and relationship building with the city. You can align Main Street with some of those priorities. That's part of your framing, right, for this. So think about those priorities and how you fit into what your mayor and your council are saying are the priorities for the city. And then think about the budget timeline here. Most local governments, not all, but most local governments run from a July 1 to June 30th fiscal year. And that means they have a very similar timeline for the development of that budget. I hear a lot of Main Street leaders saying, oh, we're going to go in and present to our city council at some point in the spring. And it's just the annual presentation, right? We're going in and talking about our stats and our numbers. But if you want to make an ask in that budget, you got to get to the table when they're actually thinking that through. And that's going to be earlier in the fall. So be aware of that timeline. If you have you have a good relationship with your city, you can ask the city manager or whoever's the finance officer who's in control of budget to just walk you through, how does this process work, right? Maybe come and present to your board about how the city budget works, or you guys can walk through those documents together. Make sure you're paying attention to those drafts when they come out, and maybe a state of the city speech if your mayor makes one, right? And meet with relevant departments and attend council hearings early in session, not just when you get to the actual decision-making process, because to be relevant when decisions are made, you have to be at the table early. Main Street's also a statewide issue. We're going to the state capitol soon, and y'all are not the only ones, right? I want to reinforce to you that your role in Main Street, advocating for Missouri Main Street and the funding for the program, is a local and state priority, and that states across the country are doing this. I'm helping advocates in multiple states get prepped to go to their capitals. There are 46 Main Street coordinating programs nationwide. Every program has a unique kind of combination of funding. Missouri Main Street Connection happens to be a nonprofit program versus some of our programs are housed in state government. But all of our programs, or all the successful programs, use some combination of state funding in order to fund their operations and grant programs. And that includes the Missouri Main Street Connection. They receive funding annually from Missouri Economic Development and partner with other departments. And I want you to be aware that this is an important year to advocate for the Missouri Main Street Connection, because state budgets, just like local budgets, have their timeline and process, relatively same timeline. And this year, it's going to be a tough one. Yesterday, your state budget, your state of the state report was released from your governor, and you're anticipated to reduce spending by at least $600 million. Gayla tells me more. And economic development is being cut by a third. The governor has a plan to eliminate income tax. That's going to have an impact across the state budget. And that means we need to be at the table advocating for Missouri Main Street, because that will impact the resources that you have in your community to do your programs. There's also potential for property tax reform that would mean less money coming to county governments if you're funded at all by the county. There's also bigger federal things that are happening right now that are impacting you. Right now, the state will be deciding on what localities participate in the Opportunity Zones program. There are 20 different communities, at least in Missouri, who have eligible areas of their main streets that are could be part of this program that is an increased incentive for economic development. That's something that you want to be aware of if you're one of those communities, and I'll talk to Keith and make sure he can tell you that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, this year is also going to be difficult for some local governments because it is the end of funding that came in COVID that was called the American Rescue Plan Act funding. All local governments got a chunk of change, and they had to spend that change by the end of 2026. So if your government was using some of that funding, whether it's for projects or programs, might be some funding that, they offset something, and so they were able to spend a little bit more on Main Street. That's going to be coming to the end, and it's going to feel like we're all going to pull back a little bit. It's going to happen everywhere across this country, that the local governments are going to have just a little bit less flexibility than they had. So all of those things combined make this a really important time to be at the table advocating for your program. And like I said up front, the most impactful way that you can do that as a Main Street leader is to build relationships with your elected officials and other leaders in your community to promote your message. I want to tell you this: you should not be alone. I don't know if there's board leaders on today. I hope that you receive this message well. Please work with your directors to be an advocate for the program. We want you to utilize all of your board as well as your staff leadership to advocate for your program. Right now you have a board with multiple people, you take your city council list, mark out who has met with each of these people, right? Do a little matrix, decide who is the best position to build relationships with different leaders, both on council or maybe within the city government. Use the board members as advocates for your program. I heard this one great local leader tell me that every month they give a new set of 3 talking points to every board member, and those are the 3 things the board should be ready to say to anybody in a position of power that month, right? It's a simple solution to make sure that people are ready to talk about the Main Street program when they have the opportunity. But make sure that you're getting your board engaged, because you can't do it alone. This is not reinventing the wheel. You do want to be prepared. You want to have your talking points about whatever your ask might be. And again, sustaining current funding is an ask, right? That is an ask. So if you have that ready, set up a coffee date with anybody that you haven't really met with yet. Just ask them to go and hang out with you, have coffee somewhere in the district, right? Ask them if they want to go for on a walk on the district, see some of your projects, right? Make it simple. The first time that you are meeting and greeting with somebody, especially if you had newer elected officials, this does not need to be an ask and a very formal thing. It needs to be the opportunity for you to know what's going on for them. What are they struggling with right now? What's important to them in this year? Ask some questions, make it a two-way conversation. And make sure that you're inviting those elected officials when you have ribbon cuttings, events in your community. Invite them when they show up, acknowledge them. The best thing that you can give a local elected official is acknowledgement, right? Everybody who's elected is running again, starting day one of their term. And so when you just say, hey, Councilwoman Moore, thank you so much for showing up here today. It's wonderful to see you at our event. That does them so much good for the community. And that's a reciprocal relationship that you can build, right? I also want to say, I'm talking a lot about local elected officials, but please, please, please do this with your state elected officials as well. You might see them coming up in February in session, but when they're at home, think about inviting them out to coffee. This is not a one-time thing, and not just this year in relationship to the budget. This can happen throughout the summer. This can happen year-long every year. And then think about your partner organizations as well, just to note, right? If you're going to make an ask of your local budget, you want to make sure that you're also making others in your community aware. Maybe you have a good relationship with your chamber, right? And you want to say, chamber, can you help uplift this for us? We want to do X. Tell them exactly what you're going for. Stay clear and committed to your own goals. You don't have to, give up anything necessarily, but like, you want to engage partners too. I had somebody ask me the other day that they wanted to go for, they get a local tax in their community. They wanted to go for a little bit more of that tax. And I said, well, who else is getting the tax? Because when you ask for that increase, it's going to negatively impact somebody else maybe. And all of a sudden you're battling with somebody and you didn't even ask whose money that was that you were stepping into. So think about making sure that you're clearing some hurdles by talking to partners along the way. Okay, just some action steps from me, from my perspective, and then I'll turn it over to Ben. Ask a local elected official or state legislator have coffee with you in your downtown. If you haven't been doing that, just take the step. Review your city's budget documents from last year or this year. They might have already put the new documents out. Just get familiar with that process. That's not something that you're regularly doing, so you feel a little bit more smooth navigating those waters. And finally, be ready for updates from Missouri Main Street Connection. They are monitoring your state budget. They are going to tell you when you need to take action. So think about building relationships all the time, but they'll tell you if you urgently reach out to somebody because of what's happening with the state budget. Watch out for that. I know Keith's on top of it and Gayla as well. They have resources dedicated to this. Really appreciate being able to talk to you for a few minutes. And I think that's all I've got. So now I have to figure out how to stop sharing. Okay, Ben, you're up.
Awesome. Great, Kelly. It's gonna look like we spent weeks and weeks coordinating, I think. Perfect segue, great handoff. Good morning, everybody. Ben Muldrow with Arnett Muldrow and Associates. I am starting off my 24th year working with Main Street organizations. Also, Keith talked about how we've been doing Mornings on Main for 6 years. We also kicked off Downtown Happy Hour 6 years ago. Got 3,800 great members that really do a ton of sharing and helping out on Facebook. And then also at home, when I don't have anything else to do, we are sharing the restoration of our 100-year-old house here in Delaware, and have about 18,000 people following along with that. So preservation is kind of every aspect of what we do, and we love it. I think that kind of hearing what Kelly talked about, I think that the foundation is so unbelievably sound of how we talk about ourselves. But I think in the Main Street world, it is important to kind of remind you that marketing and advocacy are two different things. They use similar concepts and similar mechanisms, but in the world of Main Street, we are so focused on doing and telling people about events and about that kind of stuff that we don't really spend a ton of time talking about ourselves. We're a little bit more of a humble mindset organization than we are like a boastful, and that's great. That's a great core value, but we have to advocate for ourselves. We have to educate what we do, what we're about. And I think a kind of an interesting thing that I always like to reinforce, some of you I'm sure have been through this before, but I always talk about what we call the main five, the kind of shared five audiences in the Main Street world. And I think it's important to always kind of remind everybody why we landed here. You know, back in the late 70s, the National Trust noticed that we had historic buildings all across the country that were not being invested in because they were in districts that were economically failing. They'd seen all these businesses move out to strip centers, and the goal here was we needed to motivate private sector building owners to make financial investments in their properties and create preserved buildings. But they were doing it in a place where the economy didn't justify the investment. So it was almost one of these things where I like to say that accidentally we landed on this amazing combination of an organizational and outreach driven approach, promotion, activation, vibrancy, design, placemaking, and economic development, economic restructuring, economic vitality. We accidentally invented economic development. The Main Street movement truly is the founder of modern economic development theory. We don't talk about ourselves that way. We don't realize that what we're doing is we are holistically building sustainable economies so that the unique character of a place can be preserved through its viability, not through charity. And I think that's just kind of a hugely important focus. And to kind of take you back to those main five, every single one of our Main Street organizations across the country are communicating to those same five audiences. They have to talk to owners, they have to talk to donors, they have to talk to the public, they have to talk to volunteers. But in particular, what we're going to focus in on today is them talking to the government. And real quick, you know, what are the donors? Our donors help us to exist. We don't want to be charity. We want this to be earned. Business investing in our organization, gaining exposure, leaving a legacy, and supporting the place they call home. We want to be the organization known for getting things done and a movement worth investing in. From our owners, the owners are so very important to our districts. They're the building owners, business owners, property owners, developers, prospects. They are the ones who put their blood, sweat, and tears into the district. They have the highest level of risk involved in any audience. And the best way to think of it is they're putting on a major event each and every day, and they're doing it on their own dime. The public, they're our customers, our event goers, our guests. They're the ones who make the market viable. They're the ones who support our small business. They're the economy builders, the loyal ones who return time and time again. And at Main Street, we help people fall in love with our community. And our volunteers are our lifeblood. They keep us connected. They power us. We are the thinkers and we are the doers, the crafters of vibrancy, stewards of history. Our movement is grassroots and our neighbors are our partners. And then it kind of brings us into our government, our elected officials, our city staff. These are our greatest partners all the way up to that state level. And I want to just kind of share and kind of reinforce some of the things that Kelly said to you. This kind of core idea, Main Street is not an event organizer or a feel-good nonprofit. It is a locally embedded economic development system that delivers public return on public investment. Now, for that particular audience, I hope that makes sense why that is an important way to frame it. It doesn't mean that we're not a feel-good nonprofit. It just means that being a feel-good nonprofit doesn't necessarily carry the same value when you have stewards of public dollars. Next up, what this audience cares about, they care about measurable outcomes. They care about risk reduction, stewardship of public dollars, political cover and credibility, alignment with adopted plans, and state priorities. how Main Street should be framed. Right now, we talk about our programming, our small business support. We want to scale some of that terminology. We want to shift it a little. We want to talk about small scale economic development. We want to talk about private investment leverage, business retention and expansion, BRE. We want to talk about workforce attraction, place readiness, implementation arm of adopted plans. Why are those things important? Because those are the things that elected officials are already justified in funding in their mind. They understand the value. In particular, they love the opportunity to help turn a possibly expensive plan that they funded into implementation action, especially if that implementation then gives them kind of a mirror credit of being an implementer. And I think that's always important. Proof points that resonate. Kelly made the great point. They put y'all to work. They make you report data. They make you give numbers. We want to always be able to kind of turn that back around and share those numbers. For every dollar invested, typically I see $23 to $26, in some sort of multiplier effect. Having those numbers about businesses opened and retained, buildings stabilized, tax base protected and grown. And I think that hearing some of the things that Kelly just shared with us, we are all going to need to lean on both our coordinating program as well as national to help us navigate some of those value proposition statements if we see significant change in taxing structures at state levels, because it's going to change both the way that like our local governments are going to be a little bit in the haze, not really knowing what this is going to mean for their revenue models. And so we just need to be aware. I think it's always great when we can hear things just a little ahead of the curve. Couple other things to always remember to use, talking about things like return on investment, cost avoidance, implementation partner. I know that these are buzzwords. I really, really do. But every single time we do a training, we always hear people talk about how they're frustrated that their Main Street organizations are seen as only putting on events. We've got to shift the way that we talk about ourselves. That ask, reinforcing once again what Kelly said, what are we looking for? As an organization, we want stable operational funding. We want policy alignment. We want to make sure that the policies, the zonings, the codes do not contradict with the vision that we have for our districts. We want a seat at planning and capital conversations, and we want recognition as economic infrastructure. And then that kind of final wrap up, that one sentence anchor, Main Street turns small public investments into measurable economic outcomes by doing the work government can't do alone. So I think that helps to kind of frame it. I do think that it is important. I always like to share this quote. No one ever marched on Washington because of a pie chart. That's from Andy Goodman. It is so very important, especially in 2026, to have permission to speak with emotion. The unique characters of our community, that is an emotional topic. If we were looking at straight economic development, character would not matter. It would all be about bottom dollar. But bottom dollar, national driven economic development makes our place look and feel like every other place. So there is an emotion to being unique. There is an emotion to protecting your origin story. One tool I want to share with you guys, I think is important for your boards to kind of go through this. I'm a child of the 80s, so I loved Mad Libs. This is just a Main Street Mad Lib. It's a super quick exercise that will empower each one of your board members to be able to know what their elevator speech is. Main Street should not supply an elevator speech to each one of those people. This should be an emotionally driven, customized statement of why am I giving my time to this organization? And this is just a really, really great kind of exercise for you all to go through, because everybody has a different motivation. I always tell folks, I've got 5 children, and it is important for me, for my kids to feel connected to the place that they call home. And that is why that the everything that we do with our historic downtown in Milford, Delaware, is tied to their origin story and their sense of place and their sense of personality. And that's why I'm motivated to be a part of this. Now, one of the exciting tools, I want to share a little bit about this. Some of you might have seen this. We've been working with Michigan Main Street for years, and we created something that we called the impact template. Apparently, after a budget gets over a certain price, all words always have to be an acronym. So information marketing, placemaking, and communication tool. That's what impact stands for. What we were looking for, though, is we were looking for a Main Street Swiss Army knife, a communication tool that hit on multiple audiences with a single tool. And I'm really, really excited to share with you. And I think Keith is going to kind of throw it in the chat. Logan and the team at Missouri Main Street Connection have gone through and actually created a Canva-based template for the impact. They've given you several different versions with several different focuses, but you can see this. Our original one was designed as a 4-pager. It gives a little bit of stats, talks a little bit about our kind of transformation strategy, talks a little bit about who we are, projects that we have completed, talks a little bit about our financial numbers and a little bit of accountability there, our social reach, our volunteer impact, gives us an opportunity to spotlight volunteers, spotlight building owners, show off projects we've worked on. And then the way that we kind of wrapped it up was almost tying it back in to a statewide impact as well. Now, what you've done in Missouri is a really, really great collection of different versions. I think I saw a 4-page and like a 6 or 8-page that gives you the opportunity to go a little bit deeper into certain topics, but it should make this super, super easy for you to grab and go. When we designed this, our goal was that this would be super, super low effort from our directors. We knew that the first year of putting information in would take a little bit more time, but we actually set a goal that it would take no more than 3 hours per year to update once you had a working template. And this serves as a little bit of both an annual report and a major advocacy piece for you to share who you are and what you're doing. Every single program in Michigan now updates these in January. They produce these every single year. Similar format. We did that on purpose. We did not want every communities to look completely different because we wanted our state level elected officials to start to see a little bit of a consistency in this reporting, a consistent look and feel in the impacts of what's happening in our state's downtowns. And then from there, it led to a suite of additional templates. And these are all 1-pagers. I'm going to give you a link list that Keith will be able to share with everybody to individual Canva templates for each one of these. But we talked about those audiences. We've got some audience specific 1-pagers. We've got this great 1-pager that's just who is Main Street. And honestly, I kind of challenge myself. I want to do a 1-page description of Main Street and never use the phrase 4-point approach, because in the world that we're in, we kind of use the words that we all already know. So I wanted to try to figure out, how would I talk about this to somebody that's never heard about it? And with each one of these, we've got this really great kind of guide sheet that just kind of shows you the elements that need to be updated. And these are all super quick, like less than an hour per, and you've got these great standalone pieces. An event highlight page showing off how many people you reach, what events you do. Next up, we've got a by the numbers. So for a little bit more of your analytical thinkers, especially if you're doing financial conversations, this is a great, great tool. Next up, we've got We Are. This is a board highlight, being able to show off the faces of your board. It really starts to expand out all the people that are involved instead of just always having the voice and face be that of the director. And then a Why Main Street, which is, again, just another opportunity for some project highlights. we always felt like it was important to share who we are and what we're doing. So we created this kind of layered approach to planning where we share our vision statement, our mission statement, our transformation strategies. We kind of introduce this idea of this 4-point approach filter as we go through that. What's a fun idea we have? What's a cool idea we have? And what's our action plan for implementing? And when you put all that together, that looks kind of like a one-page plan. And this gives us a very, very succinct way that we can share with others what we are trying to accomplish in the next year or two. And then on the backside of that page, you want to dig a little bit deeper into those transformation strategies, you can go through and kind of show how those transformational strategies truly filter their way through that 4-point filter and create a holistic approach to economic development. And then because I always like to kind of do crazy things, I created something this morning that I have no clue if it is going to work or not, but I want to share it with y'all because I think that it could be helpful. So let me jump over real quick to my Safari window, and I know that Kelly called out Donnie. So let's use Donnie as an example. Can y'all see the web browser?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so organization name, that would be Downtown Lee's Summit.
And Donnie is on the call on the webinar today.
Main Street Inc. Community name, Lee's Summit. I'm not a good typer, guys, sorry. Go down to your scroll down, go to Missouri. They are in Jackson County, if my memory serves me.
Yeah.
Population range, they're over 100,000. Local Main Street program, year designated, I believe 1989, I think. We got Donnie Rogers, board president, I think if my memory is good, Ben Wine.
You got it.
And then do they have like 10 to 15 members?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you input that information. You can input some information about, budget ranges. You can put in how many staff members you have. You can talk a little bit about, your volunteer numbers, primary funding sources, building that mix of how you guys are funded. Next screen, what kind of downtown do you have? You can select what fits you guys, estimated vacancy rate. And are you in a downtown National Register district? And then once you kind of get into the completion of some of these things, what are your priorities? Workforce, upper floor housing. You can add in some of that information. Research my community. It's going to go through. It's going to start to pull together some information about state legislators that respond, that kind of cover your area. It's going to talk about local government contacts, the area of impact. It's going to talk a little bit about some relevant legislation that's coming up, some grant opportunities, a municipal budget cycle for your municipality. And then you can hit generate my advocacy plan. I have no clue what this is going to do. And it starts to build a little bit of an overall plan, gives you some key messages for some of those different people that you need to talk to, core message framework, talking points, ready to use conversation starters. As you begin thinking about a fiscal year 26, I wanted to share how Main Street can help advance the city's goals. Like, hopefully this will be helpful. I don't know. Like I say, never done it before.
Very cool.
But what we're going to do is I am going to include a QR code on the last slide of that. And I don't know where it went, but the mornings on Main, yeah, I've got a QR code that I'll include in that PDF, and y'all can dig in and see if it's helpful at all, see if some of that information is useful or not. I think that a lot of times what we do, guys, is we know how hard our work is, so we kind of assume that everything's hard. And our work is hard because it's a lot. It's not necessarily hard because every single thing we do is hard. So like literally, just so you guys know, I use a lot of AI. I like AI. I think that it helps me to do tasks that are hard. I asked one AI to write a prompt for another AI so
Mhm.
that it would write a really good prompt. And then that other prompt I went in and put in the second AI, and it's what helped me to generate this tool for you. Um, I've had a lot of success in using different platforms like that to be able to go through and help you fine tune. I love the idea that Kelly shared about every month having 3 little talking points, and just like what you're doing is not only you're making it easy, but you're also constantly reinforcing that it's not just the director's job. We have got to be a chorus. And there's a reason why we're 40 years into this experiment and we're still having the same conversations about what is Main Street, is because we have had way too many soloists for way too long, and we haven't cultivated that chorus that's really singing the way they should. So I love those ideas, and being able to use technology to make that job a little bit easier. You have permission. You absolutely have permission. So I guarantee you, especially if you're environmentally conscious and you're concerned about water usage of AI, I can guarantee you that every single Main Street organization in the country can all use AI to its end potential to do their jobs better and more efficiently, and you will not even scratch the surface of a single corporation. So we should feel okay using something that might be a little iffy for the powers of good, because everybody else is using it and they're not always using it for powers of good. So at that point, that's what I've got to share with you all. Like I say, I'll share links with Keith to all of those resources, so you can feel free to pull those into Canva and edit those up and use them however you see fit. But love to open it up to questions for me or Kelly.
Yeah, and I want to say thank you, Ben. That's great. And yes, I think it's funny. There was a Main Street person years ago that talked about AI helping small businesses, and that was 5 years ago. And I kept going, I don't understand what he's talking about. And now it all makes sense because it's become more mainstream, and it's going to help small businesses, and it should help Main Streets too, particularly with our limited capacities and the great work that we do. We need help with that. Yes, Ben, if you would share the QR code, we'll ship it out to everybody. I apologize for dropping in the wrong links for the Canva templates, but I think the new ones are in there and it's working for everybody. So thank you for sharing that feedback. And I don't know if folks have been following the comments. Donnie talked about following Kelly's prescription for talking to their local legislator, and it resulted in a huge budget increase for them with their city. He followed what Kelly had said years ago, and it worked, and it worked in a huge way for them financially, because they proved and demonstrated that the impact of Main Street was so important to the city as a whole. And so thank you, Donnie, for sharing that. And Emily asked for some advice from Donnie, so I'm sure they'll get together a little bit later. And I want to share, actually, Kelly, I want you to think about opportunity zones and explaining what we need to do in just a second while I'm telling the story real quick too. I used the Mad Libs that Ben showed in a small community that was struggling with messaging, and I had them do it, and then we shared it out publicly, or shared it out at the meeting that we were at, and they all eyes were just open because everybody had a little different perspective about why they were involved in Main Street and why downtown mattered. And then that became posts and social media shares for them as board members to say, hey, we're more than one person in this organization, and we all have different viewpoints of what's important in our community. And so that Mad Lib sheet is very important also, and has become very useful in many of our communities about messaging. Because again, so many times we're concerned about getting the work done, and not about thinking about who we are and what we do. And these tools really can be helpful in that. So Kelly, opportunity zones, what do we need to be doing? And when do we need to do it? Because I have had other questions about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you asked. I'm going to tell you briefly what opportunity zones are, just in case the that isn't something that everybody is familiar with the term. Back when in President Trump's first term in 2016, 2017, you might remember there was a huge fight at that time if you were around for the historic tax credit. We were all concerned the historic tax credit was going to get removed when there was tax legislation. The historic tax credit was saved. What was happening concurrent to that process, though, was a new tax program that was included in at that time in what was called the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. It's called the Opportunity Zone program. Using a variety of different data factors, Congress decided that specific census tracts, so those can be smaller than your Main Street district, they can be a portion of your Main Street district, but specific census tracts are eligible for increased investment because they are prime for development. They have, lower rates of employment or poverty rates that tell the government that, yes, we should try to invest here, right? That program was implemented very quickly, and governors got to choose what census tracts were going to be opportunity zones based on kind of the overall eligibility. They chose a number of them. Every state can choose a different number. Governors got to make that choice, and they did so without a lot of guidance because the program was brand new. People didn't know exactly how it was going to work, right? Now, that was several years ago, and we've seen some great Main Street projects come of that. Actually, Keith, I'll follow up with you and share a great example from Indiana of how they used an opportunity zone to enhance the downtown there. But the program has been made permanent in what was called the One Big Beautiful Bill. That was tax legislation that happened earlier this year. So it's now being called kind of Opportunity Zones 2.0. And the original set of opportunity zones are going to be reformulated. If you were an opportunity zone in the past, you may or may not be an opportunity zone in the future. There's a new set of criteria, and there's a new set of rules that prioritize rural development, that prioritize places that aren't in the first round. A lot of gentrification kind of happened because they allowed places that were adjacent to places that had need participate in the program. They cut that out this time. So there's a new set of criteria. Nationwide, about 50% of main streets have an area of their community in their downtown that could be considered an opportunity zone. Now, what's the impact of that? If you get designated as an eligible opportunity zone, investors have an incentive. And we're talking guys with people with money, right? The average investor in an opportunity zone has like $1 million, right? We're talking folks that are going to pool their money and they're going to put investment into small businesses or properties. They receive a credit on their taxes, basically, on their capital gains. And that investor could live anywhere in the country, but they want to invest in areas where they're going to see impact for their investment because they're going to get the tax credit, but they're also going to get, the growth on the gains on their investment in that area. So right now, governors are deciding what is going to be the new map of opportunity zones, where those opportunity zones are going to exist in the future. It's a hot topic with a lot of, in a lot of states, a lot of governor's offices. It's normally a subset of the governor's office, maybe the Office of Economic Development, that's going to make those choices about who is an opportunity zone. Of accredited Main Street programs, I have a list, and I can tell you that there's 20 Main Street accredited programs that have areas of their community that are eligible to be opportunity zones. In fact, Cape Girardeau has like multiple census tracts within there that overlap with their downtown that could be an opportunity zone. So we want to make sure that you're at the table in two ways, right? We want to make sure that Missouri Main Street Connection for all the eligible census tracts across Missouri is at the table, potentially with the governor's office, to say, have you considered the impact of making a Main Street area an opportunity zone? We already have the capacity. We're already doing the work. We know what buildings need investment. We know about how the tax tools work. So if we can combine a historic tax credit with an opportunity zone investment, we're going to make a huge impact in those downtowns. That's the first step. The second step is for you, for folks that might be in a place with an eligible opportunity zone, such as Cape Girardeau, to go to your local government and say, please prioritize areas that are in the downtown for consideration rather than that green field out there, right? Where you might do a data center or, you know, eds and meds or some other form of economic development that's based on giving away, you know, tax dollars to attract something. Let's focus that in the downtown where we have all these existing small businesses, where we have these properties that are ready to improve, where we're utilizing existing infrastructure to make those improvements. So it's a fiscally responsible decision-making process, right? Those are reasons why you at the local level might want to talk to your local government so that you're all advocating together to be an opportunity zone. So again, I'm going to have that list. I had it up just a second ago. I'm going to make sure that Keith has that so that you know if that's you. You might have heard about this already from your local government, from other actors in the state, but I'm so sorry. I talked way too much about opportunity zones. I'm going to give everybody
So Kelly, if so, what I keep hearing from folks is that part of our district was in, part of it was out because the census tract divides the district, and the one wasn't eligible but.
Yeah.
So how do they affect that? They go through their city government that then goes to the governor's office and says, hey, consider this. Is that the process?
It is, but there are certain criteria that are baseline what's eligible for an opportunity zone. So if one area of your downtown's in as potential opportunity zone and one area just doesn't meet those basic criteria, that's the law. That area is not going to be able to get in, right? We can't change that federal law at this point. We can work on that in the future, but we can't change it at this point. So you want to just focus on the areas that are eligible to become opportunity zones.
Okay. Great. Thank you. And Kelly put a link in the chat there. And I put if anybody has questions, we're running out of time. We do have a call in 2 minutes with our Main Street directors that are participating in our Capital Day. So we want to be cognizant of time. But none of the folks on here are in that call, except I think maybe Gayla. So we could continue questions if there are others that come in. You're on mute, Gayla, sorry. But if any questions, Go ahead.
But I wanted to say, I wish Capital Day was tomorrow after Kelly and just got us all riled up and ready to go. So thank you all very, very much.
Yeah.
And especially just how we tell our message. And we were just talking about it in our office yesterday. You know, so many times we don't talk about ourselves. We talk about jobs and we talk about new business, but we don't talk about who helped create all of those. So thank you for telling us to talk about ourselves. I'm going to go. I need to be on another one.
All right. We'll wrap up. Thanks, Gayla. And Ben, thank you for the templates that you created. You shared those with us. Actually, speaking of COVID, you did our first virtual full day workshop in 2021 virtually, which is quite a feat. But you presented those 5 audiences and some of that work back then, and we have been working since then on telling your story. What are the tools? So thank you for leading the way in that. And Logan just followed your guidance when he created those. So I want to thank Logan for creating those templates. Kelly, thank Main Street America for making an annual report as part of the assessment package, because it is so important that we have those fact sheets, not only to work with our legislators, but also to make us reflect on what did we accomplish over the past year and what has been that impact. So I love that. So many of our main streets already have annual reports, but we created the templates for those that don't or need a new template that's easy to work with. And so those are out there for you to use, and we'll do in our follow-up email all the links that we supplied today. And Ben, if you give me that QR code, I'll include that link in the follow-up email from us too with the webinar for those that attended and also those that were not able to attend. I don't see any other questions coming through, so just want to thank the group for being here. This was a great presentation. As always, this will be stored in our YouTube channel. Kelly, Ben, thank you very much. 2 of our Missouri Main Street best friends. We always love to have you guys participate with us. So thank you. And Kelly, we'll see you in DC in February.
See you very soon. Ben, you're welcome to come with us, but thanks
everybody.
Fun.
I live right next door.
You should. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.